Hi, Kitchen Kings and Queens. So, today we're going to continue with our vintage kitchen collection. And we're going to look today at a set of cookware from a company called EKCO. And EKCO was a company that was from Chicago. And the company was a juggernaut when it comes to household cooking items. As you can see here, there is probably the largest of my cookware collections is EKCO. And that's because they came up with so many different lines of cookware. So let's take a look back at the beginning of the company. Okay, so the company was started by a guy named Edward Katzinger, who changed his name to Edward Keating around World War II because he was Jewish and he wanted to disassociate himself from anything German. He not only changed the name of the company as well as his surname, but the company became EKCO Products, EKCO. And you are probably familiar with this company or probably have something of it in your house. The main thing that they made or that they were known for are utensils. And they kind of pioneered this process where they started to make a line of products for every budget. Okay, so we're going to take a look here at the utensils, and then that'll kind of explain what we're looking at here in the cookware as well. So they, this would be like your cheapest one. If you look here, the metal is just chrome plated. It is starting to, uh, the plating is starting to come off. The middle line had these kind of formed plastic handles, and they, were a little bit better quality, but they were definitely your middle of the road. The best ones that they had were their Flint line. And that's what most of the cookware is EcoWare Flint. And we're going to look at the different types and options that they offer. But this was their high end. And if you see these are really worth picking up at the store. So they have a full tang. So the word full tang means that the metal goes all the way through the handle. So if you can see here, the the metal piece of the handle goes all the way through the sandwiching of the plastic. And this is like a high grade Bakelite type plastic. It's riveted with brass rivets. So this is a really nice quality utensil. And these ones are my absolute favorite. They came up with all different types of styles. They pioneered that concept of choice in consumer products, both in price and in design and options. So we're going to look at that as well through the cookware. We'll do more with EKCO products because there were so many different things that they did. I'm going to do a whole show just on utensils, but they also did cutlery. Their main business was bakeware. So the father of the guy who started this, he kind of started with a bakeware company, and that was their initial business was commercial bakeware, and that's where they really started with the right idea of offering like standardization and building up like a bulk inventory. Because prior to them coming up with that idea, and it was actually Edward's son Arthur who was the person that really brought the company into its full potential. Probably the best years of the company were during his involvement. because he, in addition to coming up with those innovative things for products that they already had, he was also acquiring lots of little manufacturers. So there would be one company that would be making just pizza cutters, or they would have a utensil. One of the utensils that they sold is something called a kitchenmajig. And that was a really innovative product because it was a scoop, it was a whisk, it was all these multi products into one. And became one of their big sellers. So we'll look at that in the utensils. I'm going off on the utensils because that's what they were known for. But really, their initial business was commercial bakeware, and their father that came over from Austria was initially in New York and then Kansas City and then settled in Chicago where they started. And that was a big baking center because Chicago was where it was the crossroads of the East and West. So a lot of grain came through there, a lot of grain was stored there. Obviously, this Chicago stockyards were there, so it was big in all kinds of food processing. But it was a big baking center, and it still is. There's big companies there like Brill Baking Products was from Chicago. There was a chocolate company called Blomers that made commercial chocolate, like actual chocolate for confection. And they were really well known for that. Unfortunately, a lot of these companies, like everywhere else, are leaving the areas that they started in. So it's kind of a sad story. This plant that made all this stuff actually closed in 1992. That was the final closing of that. But the company sold out of the Keating, or formerly Katzinger, family in 1965. And then it just kind of went through the American business cycles of being bought up into a conglomerate, and then it was in the 80s it was sold to a bunch of different conglomerates of companies that you would never imagine would have anything to do with housewares, like a computer printer company. But that was the 80s. The 80s was all about these multi industry conglomerates and just buying whatever you can and bundling it together. And then eventually it went to the hedge funds, and then the hedge funds, of course, send everything outsourced. And that was what happened in 1992 when the plant finally closed. And the plant was on Cicero Avenue, and it was in an area that was pretty much in the northwest portion of the city of Chicago. Okay, so that's the company. Now let's take a look at the different lines that I have here. So one of the ones that I really love is this version of their 3-ply. So this is the 3-ply, just the regular old 3-ply. This is the one that remember we talked about in the beginning that they did a lot of where they would showcase options. Okay, so you didn't have to just get the stainless steel. You could get this kind of whimsical pattern that they offered. And there's one example of a pattern, which is just kind of these swirls. And then there's another one here that was kind of these like little half moons, or like kind of like a wave. There's another one here that is like a daisy pattern. The unfortunate thing about these is they didn't hold up very well to washing and things like that. So that was that pattern. Then they came out with a copper clad bottom line. Okay, so this is very similar to our last cookware that we did, which was Revereware. So they came out with their own line of copper clad, and that's what we have over here. So this is a smaller portion of my collection, but that's the copper clad section over here. Over here is um, the decorated ones, and again, I really love these decorations, especially the daisy one. The problem is they just didn't hold up. I don't know if they don't hold up in the dishwasher or if they kind of came up with scrubbing, but they just weren't on there to kind of last. So it's very hard to find them. Most of them are similar to this, which is like, I don't know if you could see, it's kind of faded. You could see the pattern, but it's faded. The ones that I have are pretty good. The daisy one, except kind of on the end here, uh, it's a little, but this swirl one is in pretty good condition. Okay, and then you can see there's a plethora of lids that they had. So they had this like kind of knob lid. They had this round knob lid. Sorry for all this clanging. They had this lid that kind of goes um, under. Maybe it'll fit better there. It's got kind of a like a more like a. This is more like a Farberware type lid or even a Revereware lid. Um, and but the main lid that they had was kind of this like it's like a curve. It's a really nice, very contemporary, very kind of all around good design. They really made these pans. You could see they they're great. They're timeless. They're just very contemporary look with very contemporary handles. The handles are short. They're very comfortable. There's like a little with the curve here. There's a little space for you to put your um, thumb. It feels really nice in your hand, and that's not always the case. They are like a Bakelite type plastic, so they don't. They kind of fade in the dishwasher. This one, the copper ones are a little bit better just because people didn't put them in the dishwasher because of the copper bottom. So these ones are a little bit better and shinier, but you can clean them up and you can use Mother's Mag and stuff for cleaning them up. In addition to the variety of different lines that they offered, they also had a great array of sizes. So up here we have a 12-inch skillet. I have this huge stock pot. This is a 12-quart stock pot. That's a pretty big stock pot. There's a 12-quart. There's this 8-quart here. There's a 6.5-quart, a 6-quart, and then the saucepans went from 4, 3, 2.5 to 1, and uh, that's the basic lines of the saucepans and stock pots. Then we had the frying pan. So we had a 7-quart and 10-quart, the 12-quart. I think this is, yeah, this is an 8-quart. So, or I'm sorry, 8-inch. I'm sorry, 7-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch skillet. Okay, but I guess I thought I had one for the 8-inch of the the regular line. So this is the Flint line, which is just the stainless steel cookware. That's the copper bottom. This is tri-ply, so this is a little bit more of a thicker gauge because they use three layers of stainless steel. One of the cool things that they marketed these as, this is can work as waterless cooking. So we'll do a whole episode on waterless cooking. But basically, the concept behind waterless cooking, or some places call it fatless cooking or greaseless cooking, is that you didn't need to put any additional fat or water into the pan. Because what would happen was the way the lids sat on there and the gauge of the stainless steel, and these were even more so, the 3-ply were even more so geared towards the waterless cooking. So what would happen is as the pan heated up, and you would only use a low temperature. Okay, that's the like no higher than medium would you use for the temperature for these pans when you're cooking with waterless, because it didn't need that. So what it would do is it would develop a vapor seal, and you would know that when you could turn the pan and the lid would spin freely, almost like it was floating, because it was floating under the vapor seal. So the vapor seal would be built up, and that would keep the moisture in there, and it would cook basically kind of like a steam type cooking. This was marketed, there's a lot of companies that are marketed. Most of them are made by one company, which is called West Bend or Regalware. Those are the two big ones. So those were your initial companies that made that. And then it was marketed under a bunch of different names. There was a company called Salad Master. So they were marketing this with those much more expensive cookware because they could cook in that same way because of the design of the lids. So it wasn't that they were just saying it could do that. It could do that, but those pans have a lot thicker gauge of steel, and they're a lot more stainless steel. So even though they could do it, they weren't exactly on par with those cookware. So there's also um, there was a double boiler insert. There's a steamer insert for it as well. They made all these different types of inserts. So this one is great. This is and they're really heavy. This is like a egg poacher, and this has a lot. There's 6. You can do half a dozen eggs poached in this egg poacher. So this is a really, this is a good thing, and it came with it. The steel is very heavy. The cups are very heavy, and this would have been very easy for them to make because they were making measuring cups and things like that in the plant. So it was very easy for them to kind of offer these really high quality inserts. So this line, the one that I have most of, is this just the stainless steel EKCO Flint line. You may notice, especially like this one, they're a little wobbly. So one of the problems with these pans, and why stainless steel pans kind of got a bit of a negative rap, is because they would warp under the heat, especially if you were using it on a high heat on a coil burner. Those coil burners get very hot, and it's a very aggressive direct heat. So they would warp those stainless steel pans. If you look at the bottom, these were marketed because they have an indentation here. This is called the radiant core. So it's indented a little bit, and that's also a component of the waterless cooking. And that's by design so that the pan can fluctuate under the heat. So if you use too high of a heat, the pans do warp. And that's why companies like All Clad really took off, because what they did is they took everything that was good about Farberware and they just stretched it out over the pan. They stretched it out over the interior and exterior, and they used more metal. And that created a really durable, heavy duty commercial cooking pan. So probably we'll do All Clad next, which is, as you know from previous episodes, is my favorite. So this is really good cookware. It's timeless, it looks nice, it can be cleaned up very well, it's enjoyable to cook on. We're going to do a series of recipes. I'm going to do some recipes from the literature that comes with this. So they gave you a lot of good recipe ideas. There's a good, what looks like a really good barbecue chicken, barbecue sauce, and chicken in the to be used with these pans. So we're going to do some recipes from EKCO that were written for the cookware. So that's my collection. I'm going to leave you with a view of the collection, each individual piece. And I'm also going to share at the end some literature that I have collected that relates to this. So you'll be able to see how it was marketed, some of the features that were highlighted in there, some of the options of sets that were available, and you'll see why this was really a juggernaut of cookware. It really competed with Revereware and Farberware, and it really was a high quality stainless steel cookware. If you were looking for the better ones, I would say that the 3-ply is probably your best line. This is probably your run-of-the-mill line, the Flint line. And then this was comparable to your Revereware. So it was also probably a high-end brand. You'll see that if you ever compare these two, the stainless steel is a lot thicker gauge on these EKCO copper clad bottom as opposed to the Revereware. So the Revereware had the look, they had the marketing, but I actually think that I'd like to do a little test with a micrometer and find out if I'm correct. But the thickness, even the copper on the bottom, feels like it is a thicker gauge and thicker cladding than it is on the Revereware. That's not to say I don't love my Revereware. You saw I have quite an extensive collection of Revereware, but they really did a good job. EKCO was a pretty good company, and what was really great about them was they gave everyone an option to buy their products. So whether you were getting the Flint, which they use this steel called vanadium steel. So vanadium is an element that they used in their stainless steel mixture, and it's a really high quality stainless steel. The chrome plated stuff is not that great. It gets scratched. It the pot metal comes out from underneath, and it's not so good. But the Flint line and the vanadium, these are really good quality. You can also find the versions that they made for Sears. So Sears Roebuck was another Chicago company, and EKCO really pioneered the contract manufacturing for Sears. So they did a lot. They had it was, I think the line was called Modern Made, was the line of utensils that they did for their cookware. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. I want to thank the Virtual Museum of Chicago for all this great information that I got to share with you. Um, it's I've never been to Chicago, but it's a city that's on my list, and it's definitely somewhere that I think I would really enjoy. It has a very proud industrial history. They were really instrumental in the industrial development of this country, and I think there's a lot to learn from that website. And it's really cool. It's a virtual museum. There's a virtual map of all the locations. So if you get a chance and you're interested in industrial history, you will be amazed at how many things were made in Chicago, and how many industries it touched on. Okay, so bye for now, Kitchen Kings and Queens. I hope you enjoyed this, and we will be cooking with this beautiful cookware this week. So keep your eyes peeled. Bye.